The transport ship docked with Harmony Nexus at exactly 0800 station time. Amy Carter stood in the airlock waiting for the pressure to equalize. Behind her, secured in a large environmental carrier, something moved and made a low sound. She placed her hand against the carrier's side and whispered that everything would be fine. The airlock opened. A tall figure with crystalline skin that reflected the station lights stood waiting. His name was Instructor Zell, and he was older than most Velkari who still worked. His skin had a pale blue tint that spoke of many years and much wisdom. "Lieutenant Carter, welcome to Harmony Nexus." His voice came through a translation device that hung around his neck. "We are honored to have humanity represented in our first exchange program." Amy smiled and shook his hand, noting how carefully he moved. The Velkari were fragile compared to humans, and Zell seemed aware of this. "Thank you, Instructor. I'm excited to be here." Zell's eyes moved to the large carrier behind her. "And this is the companion you mentioned in your application?" "Yes, sir. This is Apollo. He's essential to my presentation on human culture." The instructor's skin shifted slightly, taking on a darker tone. Amy had studied Velkari biology during her training. Darker colors meant concern or fear. "The council approved your request, but I must ask, is he dangerous?" Amy considered the question carefully. She never lied about Apollo. "He's a predator. In the wild, his species hunts animals much larger than themselves. But he's been raised by humans since he was 6 weeks old. He trusts me completely." Zell was quiet for a moment. "The other students will be frightened." "I know. That's part of why I brought him." The instructor studied her face, then nodded slowly. "Come, I will show you to your quarters. Your presentation is scheduled for 2 weeks from now. That should give everyone time to adjust to the idea." Amy followed Zell through the corridors of Harmony Nexus. The station was massive, built by a dozen species working together. The architecture reflected this cooperation. Smooth curves suited the aquatic pollux, while strong metals satisfied the Thryn. The lighting adjusted automatically for different visual ranges. They passed several students in the hallways. Each one stopped and stared at the human in her carrier. A young Thryn pressed herself against the wall, her insectoid body rigid with tension. 2 Velkari students turned and walked quickly in the opposite direction. Amy noticed but said nothing. She had expected this reaction. Her quarters were in the human-compatible section of the station. The gravity, atmosphere, and temperature were all set to Earth normal. Zell helped her move the carrier inside, though she could tell he wanted to leave quickly. "The first class session is tomorrow at 0900, he said from the doorway. "We will cover basic protocols and introductions. Please leave your companion here for now." "Of course." After Zell left, Amy opened the carrier. Apollo bounded out, his spotted coat gleaming under the station lights. He was 9 months old now, still young but already showing the powerful build of his species. He rubbed against her legs and she scratched behind his ears. "Welcome to space, buddy," she said softly. "You're going to help me teach them something important." The next morning, Amy arrived at the classroom early. It was a large circular room with seats arranged in tiers. The design allowed every species to see and be seen. A large display screen covered one wall, and several smaller screens floated in the air, ready to show information in different formats. Students began arriving. Amy counted 20 individuals from 19 different species. Humans were the only predator species in the program. Every other representative came from a species that had evolved as prey or as peaceful gatherers. A Velkari female sat near the front. Her skin was a healthy green color, young and vibrant. She introduced herself as Petra, and seemed curious about Amy despite her obvious nervousness. "Is it true that humans eat meat?" Petra asked. Her voice was high and musical. "Yes," Amy replied honestly. "We're omnivores. We eat both plants and meat." Petra's skin darkened slightly. "And you hunt for this meat?" "Some humans do. Most of us buy it from farms now. But yes, our ancestors were hunters." A Thryn student named Click joined the conversation. His species communicated partly through sound and partly through pheromones, which the translation device converted to speech. "This explains the rumors about human soldiers. They say your military is the most effective in the galaxy." Amy shrugged. "We're good at tactics and strategy. Hunting requires patience, planning, and the ability to predict what your target will do. Those skills transfer to other areas." A Polic student named Marina floated in her water-filled environmental suit. The lights in her body pulsed in patterns that the translator converted to words. "But you also form partnerships, correct?" Humans work together? Yes, humans are social predators. We hunt in groups, we protect each other, and we share resources. It's one of our strengths. Instructor Zell entered the room and the conversation stopped. He moved to the center of the space and welcomed everyone. His speech was formal and covered the purpose of the exchange program. Breaking down barriers, building understanding, creating a foundation for better cooperation between species. Each of you represents your people, Zell said. You are here to learn but also to teach. Share your cultures, your knowledge, your perspectives. This is how we grow beyond our limitations. The first week passed in a blur of presentations and discussions. Each student shared information about their homeworld, their biology, their history. Amy learned that the Velkari had never developed weapons beyond simple tools. Their entire civilization was built on hiding from predators and eventually leaving their planet to escape them entirely. The Thrinn were more advanced technologically, but equally peaceful. Their hive structure meant they thought in terms of the collective good. Individual violence was almost unknown in their society. The Polix had no concept of hunting at all. They filtered nutrients from the water and had evolved in an environment with almost no predators. The idea of one creature killing another for food was deeply disturbing to them. Amy's presentation was scheduled for the beginning of the third week. As the date approached, she noticed the other students watching her more carefully. They whispered when she entered rooms. Some asked careful questions about Earth and its animals. On the day before her presentation, Petra approached her after class. Lieutenant Carter, I must ask you something. Please call me Amy. Amy. Petra's skin shifted through several colors, settling on a nervous yellow. Tomorrow, when you give your presentation, will you bring the predator? Amy met her eyes. Yes, his name is Apollo, and he's the main subject of my talk. Petra's color darkened. Many students are frightened. Some have filed formal concerns with Instructor Zell. I know, but what I need to teach can't be taught with words and pictures alone. They need to see Apollo. They need to understand what's possible. What if something goes wrong? Amy placed her hand on Petra's shoulder, a human gesture of comfort. The Velkari flinched slightly but didn't pull away. I've worked with Apollo every day since he was a baby. I know his moods, his signals, his needs. He won't hurt anyone, but he's a predator. Yes, and that's exactly why this matters. That evening, Amy spent extra time with Apollo. She ran him through his training exercises, fed him his meal, and checked his health markers. Everything was perfect. He was healthy, calm, and well-adjusted. She sat on the floor of her quarters with Apollo's head in her lap. He was purring, a deep rumbling sound that she found comforting. Tomorrow is important, she told him. You need to be on your best behavior. Can you do that for me? Apollo's eyes were half closed in contentment. He had no idea what she was saying, but he knew her tone. It was the voice she used when she was happy with him. Amy didn't sleep much that night. She kept thinking about all the ways the presentation could go wrong. Apollo might get scared by the crowd. The other students might panic and trigger his hunting instincts. The translator devices might malfunction at a critical moment, but she also thought about why she was here. Humans had something unique to offer the galaxy, not just their strength or their tactical abilities, but their understanding of cooperation across species lines. If she could show these students that even a predator could be a partner, it might change how they thought about humans entirely. The morning arrived. Amy dressed in her uniform and prepared Apollo's carrier. He was excited, sensing that something different was happening. She gave him a small treat and secured him in the carrier with gentle hands. Ready? She asked him. Apollo made a small sound somewhere between a chirp and a growl. Amy smiled. Me too. Let's go change some minds. The classroom was already full when Amy arrived. Word had spread about the human's presentation, and students from other classes had requested permission to observe. Instructor Zell had approved them, and now the tiered seats were packed with representatives from dozens of species. Amy pushed the carrier on its floating platform. Through the transparent panels, Apollo was visible. He sat calmly, looking out at the crowd with curious eyes. The reaction was immediate. A Velkari student in the third row stood up and moved toward the exit. Two Thrinn pressed themselves against the back wall, their wings buzzing in agitation. Marina, the Polix student, dimmed all her lights except for the red ones that signaled distress. Petra remained in her seat near the front, but her skin had turned dark amber. Her hands gripped the edge of her desk. and Amy could see small cracks forming in her crystalline structure. That only happened when Valkyrie experienced extreme fear. Instructor Zell stepped forward. "Lieutenant Carter, perhaps we should review the safety protocols before proceeding." Amy nodded. "Of course." She moved to the center of the room, leaving the carrier near the entrance. Apollo is 9 months old. He weighs approximately 40 kilograms. His species is capable of taking down prey much larger than themselves in the wild. But Apollo has never hunted. He's been raised by humans in a controlled environment. Click, the Thrin student spoke up from the back of the room. "What prevents him from attacking us now?" "Instinct is powerful. Training and trust," Amy replied. "Apollo has been socialized with humans since he was 6 weeks old. He understands commands. He knows appropriate behavior. And most importantly, he's well-fed and content. Predators don't hunt for sport. They hunt because they're hungry or threatened. But we are prey species," Petra said quietly. Her voice shook. "Our ancestors died to creatures like him. The fear is in our genes." Amy looked at her with understanding. "I know, and I'm not asking you to ignore that fear. I'm asking you to see beyond it." She activated the display screens. Images of Earth appeared, showing vast grasslands, dense forests, and deep oceans. My world has thousands of predator species, large and small, on land, in water, in the air. Humans evolved surrounded by creatures that could kill us. A video played showing a large cat with a dark mane. This is a lion. A pride of lions can kill and eat an adult human in minutes. Another video showed a massive reptile in water. This is a saltwater crocodile. They've been apex predators for millions of years. The students watched in horrified fascination. Click spoke again. "How did your species survive?" "We learned. We adapted. We built tools and weapons. But more importantly, we learned to understand predators, not just how to avoid them, but how they think, how they behave, what they need." Amy changed the display to show different images. Dogs sitting with humans, cats curled in laps, birds perched on shoulders. And then we did something that most species consider impossible. We befriended them. Silence filled the room. A small Polak student named Drew pulsed a confused pattern of lights. "Befriended predators? Why?" "Because predators have skills we needed. Dogs could track prey better than humans. They could hear and smell things we couldn't. Cats could hunt the small animals that ate our stored food. Birds could find water and safe paths. Working together made both species stronger." She showed videos of humans and animals working side by side. Search and rescue dogs finding people in collapsed buildings. Horses carrying humans across long distances. Even dolphins helping fishermen by herding fish into nets. "This is partnership," Amy said. "This is what happens when you move past fear and into understanding." Instructor Zell had been quiet, but now he spoke. "These animals in your videos, they are domesticated, bred over generations to be gentle. The creature in that carrier is wild." "Apollo's species isn't domesticated," Amy agreed. "But he was orphaned as a baby. His mother was killed by poachers, humans who break our laws to hunt protected animals. I found him and raised him. He's not a pet. He's a partner in teaching." She walked back to the carrier. "I'm going to open this now. I need you all to remain calm. Sudden movements and loud sounds will frighten him. If you feel you can't handle this, please leave now. No one will judge you." 3 students stood and left quickly. Several others looked like they wanted to, but stayed in their seats. Petra remained, her skin dark but her eyes fixed on Amy. Amy knelt beside the carrier and opened the door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Apollo stepped out slowly. His paws made no sound on the floor. His eyes scanned the room, taking in the crowd of unfamiliar beings. The effect was immediate and powerful. Apollo was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. His coat glowed golden brown with black rosettes. His muscles moved smoothly under his skin. His eyes were amber and intelligent and focused. A Valkyrie student in the back made a high-pitched sound of fear. Apollo's head turned sharply toward the sound. His body tensed. His tail dropped low and began to twitch. The room held its breath. Amy remained calm. "Apollo, look at me." The leopard's eyes moved to her face. She held his gaze and kept her voice steady. "Sit." Apollo sat. The tension in his body eased slightly. Amy stood and walked a few steps away. "Apollo, come." The leopard stood and walked to her side. Several students gasped as he moved. His gait was fluid and silent. Every step showed the power in his body. Down. Apollo lay down on the floor, his eyes still watching the room. Amy addressed the class. What you're seeing is communication. Apollo understands these words because I taught him. He responds because he trusts me. This is the foundation of any partnership. She knelt beside Apollo and placed her hand on his head. He didn't move. Predators aren't mindless killing machines. They're intelligent, social, emotional beings. They feel fear, joy, curiosity, affection, just like you, just like me. Petra found her voice, but he growled. When that student made a sound, he growled. No, Amy said gently. He didn't growl, he looked. There's a difference. A growl is a warning or a threat. He was just identifying the source of an unexpected sound. She stood again. Now I'm going to demonstrate something important. Apollo, stay. Amy walked to the front of the room, putting distance between herself and the leopard. Apollo remained lying down, but his eyes followed her. When she was about 10 meters away, she turned to face him. This is the hard part, she told the class. Not for Apollo, but for you. What I'm about to do will trigger every prey instinct you have, but I need you to watch carefully and understand what you're seeing. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small piece of prepared meat. The moment she did, Apollo's entire body language changed. He sat up, his eyes fixed on her hand. His tail began to move in a different pattern, and then he made the sound. It started low in his chest and rose into the room. It was deep and rumbling and primal, a sound that had terrified prey animals for millions of years. The classroom erupted. Petra shattered a piece of her own skin in fear. Click's wings exploded into full buzz mode. Marina flooded her suit with dark colors. Half the students pushed back in their seats, trying to get farther away. 2 more ran for the exit. Instructor Zell reached for the emergency containment button on the wall. Amy raised her free hand. Wait, please, just watch. Apollo was still making the sound, but he hadn't moved from his sitting position. His eyes were locked on the meat in Amy's hand. His tail swished back and forth. He just wants a treat, Amy said calmly. The words seemed absurd in the face of the sound Apollo was making, but Amy walked toward him with steady steps. She held out the meat. Apollo, gentle. The leopard stood and walked to her. He took the meat from her hand with careful teeth and chewed it while she scratched behind his ears. The sound he had been making changed pitch and became something else entirely, something softer, something almost pleased. That wasn't a hunting growl, Amy explained to the shocked class. That was him begging for food. It's communication. He was saying, I'm hungry. I know you have something good. Please give it to me. She fed Apollo 2 more pieces of meat, each time having him sit or perform a simple command first. With each treat, the students could see the pattern. The sound preceded the reward. The behavior earned the treat. It was a conversation between human and predator. Petra spoke, her voice shaking. But it sounded so aggressive. It sounds that way to you because your instincts tell you that deep sounds from large predators mean danger. But watch his body language. His tail is up and relaxed. His ears are forward. His eyes are soft. These are all signs of a comfortable, happy animal. Amy sat on the floor and Apollo immediately came to her. He lay down beside her and put his head in her lap. The rumbling sound continued, but it was gentler now, rhythmic and steady. This is purring, Amy said, stroking his fur. It's how his species shows contentment. He's happy. He feels safe. He trusts me completely. The transformation in the room was remarkable. Students who had been terrified moments ago now leaned forward in curiosity. The immediate fear remained, but it was tempered by fascination. Click spoke carefully. How long did this training take? We've been working together for 7 months, but the foundation was built in the first few weeks. Consistent interaction, positive reinforcement, understanding his needs and meeting them. It's not complicated, but it requires patience and dedication. For the next hour, Amy continued her presentation. She demonstrated more commands that Apollo followed. She explained the theory behind positive reinforcement training. She showed videos of other humans working with different predator species, from wolves to eagles to even large reptiles. The students asked questions carefully at first, then with growing confidence. How do you know when a predator is angry? How do you establish trust? What happens if the training fails? Amy answered each question honestly, never minimizing the risks but always emphasizing the rewards. Drew, the small Polak student, pulsed a shy pattern of lights. Could other species learn to do this? Or is it something only humans can achieve? Amy considered the question.
I think any intelligent species could learn these skills.
It requires observation, patience, and a willingness to see past instinctive fear. Those aren't uniquely human traits. But you said humans evolved as predators too, Click pointed out. Perhaps that gives you an advantage. You understand the predator mind because you share it. Maybe, Amy admitted. But humans also evolved with strong prey instincts. We're not apex predators. We're somewhere in the middle. We can hunt, but we can also be hunted. That dual perspective might actually help us understand both sides. Instructor Zell had been quiet through most of the presentation, but now he spoke. Lieutenant Carter, you have demonstrated something remarkable. But I must ask a difficult question. Is this partnership or is this dominance? You give commands and the predator obeys. Where is the equality in that? It was a fair question. Amy nodded. You're right that the relationship isn't equal in the way you might think. Apollo depends on me for food, shelter, and care. But I also depend on him. He teaches me patience. He helps me understand animal behavior. He connects me to something wild and ancient. She looked down at Apollo, still resting peacefully beside her. And the commands aren't dominance. They're communication. When I say sit, I'm not forcing him to submit. I'm asking him to perform a behavior he already knows, and he chooses to do it because he knows good things follow. It's cooperation, not control. Petra raised her hand hesitantly. May I ask Apollo a question? Amy smiled.
He doesn't understand Velkari, but you can try. Petra stood slowly.
Her skin was still dark with fear, but there was determination in her posture. She moved down to the floor level, staying several meters away from Apollo. Apollo, can you hear me? The leopard's ears twitched in her direction. His eyes opened and focused on her. I am Petra. I come from a world where creatures like you killed my ancestors. For thousands of generations, my people ran and hid. We built our entire civilization around escaping predators. Her voice grew stronger. But you are not attacking me. You are not hunting. You are just on being. And maybe that means my fear is wrong. Maybe it means there is another way. Apollo yawned, showing all his teeth. Petra flinched but held her ground. Then the leopard put his head back down and closed his eyes. He's tired, Amy explained. This is a lot of stimulation for him. New place, new sounds, new smells. He's actually being very patient. Click moved closer as well, his insectoid body clicking softly. In my species, we have protocols for everything. We calculate risks and benefits. We make logical decisions based on data. He paused. But this is not logical. Approaching a predator is illogical. Yet I find myself wanting to do it anyway. That's curiosity overcoming fear, Amy said. It's the same drive that made early humans approach wolves. The same drive that leads to all great discoveries. Marina floated closer in her water-filled suit, her lights pulsing in a thoughtful pattern. Among my people, we share emotions through color and light. I can see that you care for Apollo deeply. The way you touch him, the way you speak, it is genuine affection. Yes, Amy said simply. I love him. Not in spite of what he is, but because of it. He's a predator. And that's beautiful in its own way. Powerful and graceful and perfectly designed for his purpose. The class continued until Instructor Zell finally called for a break. Students filed out slowly, many of them looking back at Apollo. Some kept their distance, but others seemed reluctant to leave. After the room cleared except for Zell, Amy secured Apollo back in his carrier with fresh water and a comfortable cushion. He settled immediately, exhausted from the experience. That was not what I expected, Zell admitted. His skin had returned to its normal pale blue. I thought there would be panic, perhaps injuries. But you maintained control throughout. Apollo maintained control, Amy corrected. I just guided him. The credit is his. Will you do more demonstrations? If students want them, yes. But I think the most important part is done. They've seen him. They've heard him. They've started to understand. Over the next few days, something shifted in the atmosphere of Harmony Nexus. Students who had been terrified of Amy now approached her in the corridors. They asked about Apollo, about Earth, about other predators. The questions revealed a growing fascination. Petra visited Amy's quarters 3 days after the presentation. I have been thinking, she said, her skin a bright, curious yellow, about what you showed us, about partnership instead of fear. And, Amy prompted, on my world we have creatures that damage our crops, small animals that burrow and eat roots. We use barriers and chemicals to stop them. But what if we approach them differently? What if we tried to understand them instead of just fighting them? Amy felt a surge of hope. That's exactly the kind of thinking that leads to solutions. Understanding behavior is the first step to finding better ways to coexist. Would you help me learn? Not with predators necessarily. Just with the principles of animal behavior and communication? I would be honored. Click approached her during a meal period in the common area. I have been running calculations, he said without preamble. The efficiency gains from human-style animal partnerships are substantial. For search and rescue operations alone, trained animals could reduce response times by 40%. Those are impressive numbers, Amy agreed. My government is interested in exploring this further. They want to know if you would be willing to consult on a pilot program. Amy nearly dropped her food. Seriously? We are a logical species. When presented with data that shows clear benefits, we adapt. Your demonstration provided that data. Even Marina sought her out, floating through the corridors in her environmental suit. Your bond with Apollo has inspired our artists. They want to create something that celebrates connection across species. Would you grant permission to use recordings from your presentation? Of course. I'm happy that it resonated with your people. Resonated is an inadequate word. Marina pulsed. You showed us something we thought impossible. In my culture, that is sacred. Not everyone was convinced. Some students remained frightened. A few filed formal complaints arguing that bringing a predator to an educational station was reckless, regardless of training. Amy understood their concerns and never pushed. But the tide had turned. More students wanted to learn than wanted to hide. 2 weeks after her first presentation, Amy gave a second one. This time it was by popular request, and she spent less time on Apollo and more time on the philosophy behind interspecies cooperation. She talked about observation skills, about reading body language, about the patience required to build trust. The key, she explained, is to stop seeing other species as threats or tools and start seeing them as individuals. Every creature has needs, desires, fears. When you understand those things, you can find common ground. A student from a species Amy hadn't met before raised a tentacle-like appendage, but predators and prey have opposite needs. One needs to hunt, the other needs to survive. How is common ground possible? Because hunting isn't the only need a predator has, Amy replied. Apollo needs food, yes. But he also needs mental stimulation, physical exercise, social interaction, and security. Most of those needs overlap with prey species needs. That's where partnership begins. She showed a video of dogs and sheep living peacefully on human farms. These dogs are descended from wolves. Their ancestors hunted sheep, but humans bred and trained them to protect sheep instead. Now they live together. The dogs get food and purpose. The sheep get protection. Everyone benefits. After the presentation, Instructor Zell invited Amy to his office. The space was designed for Valkyrie comfort, with soft lighting and crystalline decorations that reflected light in peaceful patterns. I must confess something, Zell said once they were seated. When you applied to this program, I voted against accepting you. I thought bringing a human was risky enough. Bringing a predator seemed insane. Amy remained quiet, letting him continue. But I was wrong. What you have accomplished here goes beyond education. You have challenged assumptions that some of these species have held for their entire existence. You have planted seeds of change. I just showed them Apollo, Amy said modestly. You showed them possibility. That is perhaps the greatest gift one being can give another. Zell's skin shifted to a warm gold color. The council has asked me to extend an invitation. They want you to present to the full Galactic Assembly. Amy's eyes widened. The full assembly? That's hundreds of species. 643 to be precise. And they all need to see what we have seen here. That's a lot of pressure. You have already proven yourself capable, and Apollo has proven himself to be an excellent ambassador. Amy thought about it. The gala the next 4 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Amy spent hours with Apollo, training him for larger crowds and more chaotic environments. She gradually increased the number of people present during their sessions, bringing in volunteers from the station to help him acclimate. Petra became a regular presence during these training sessions. Her initial fear had transformed into genuine curiosity. She sat at a safe distance and observed, taking notes on her datapad. He responds faster when you use a higher tone of voice, she commented one day. Amy nodded. Positive reinforcement works best with enthusiasm. He associates the happy tone with rewards. We use tone in my language too, but for different reasons. Higher tones indicate danger warnings. It is strange to think the same sound can mean opposite things. That's why context matters so much. Apollo doesn't just hear my words. He reads my body language, my facial expressions, the situation around us. It's all part of the communication. Click attended several sessions as well, though he approached the situation more analytically. He recorded data on Apollo's response times, success rates, and behavioral patterns. His accuracy in following commands is 97%, he reported. That is higher than some trained military personnel in my species. He's motivated, Amy explained. Every correct response leads to something good. Treats play affection. Why wouldn't he want to succeed? Marina asked different questions. Does Apollo dream? Does he feel happiness the way we do? Does he understand that you care for him? I can't know exactly what he experiences, Amy admitted. But yes, I believe he dreams. I've seen him twitch and make sounds in his sleep. And I know he feels emotions. Fear, joy, contentment, frustration. I see them in his behavior every day. As for understanding my care, I think he knows I'm important to him. Whether he conceptualizes it as love the way humans do, I can't say. The day of the Galactic Assembly presentation arrived. Amy had barely slept the night before. She spent the early morning hours with Apollo, running through their routine one final time. He performed perfectly, as he almost always did. The assembly chamber was enormous. Built into an asteroid, it had been hollowed out and reinforced to create a space that could hold thousands of beings. Gravity generators allowed species with different needs to occupy different sections. The air was carefully filtered to accommodate various respiratory systems. Amy stood in the preparation area with Apollo in his carrier. Through the walls, she could hear the murmur of hundreds of conversations in dozens of languages. Her hands shook slightly as she adjusted her uniform. Petra appeared beside her. The Velkari had insisted on coming to offer support. You will do well, she said, her skin a confident green. I hope so. This is bigger than anything I've ever done. You have already changed minds here on Harmony Nexus. Today you will change minds across the galaxy. The call came. Amy pushed Apollo's carrier toward the entrance to the chamber. The massive doors opened and the sound hit her like a wave. Thousands of beings, all watching, all waiting. She walked to the center of the space. A platform rose beneath her feet, lifting her high enough for everyone to see. Holographic displays surrounded her, ready to project images to every section of the chamber. Members of the Galactic Assembly, she began, her voice amplified by the translation systems. My name is Lieutenant Amy Carter and I represent humanity. Today I want to talk to you about fear and about what lies beyond it. She activated the displays showing images of Earth. My world is dangerous. It is filled with creatures that can kill, that have killed, that will kill again. For most of my species' history, we lived in constant danger from predators. The images changed to show ancient humans cowering in caves, running from large cats and wolves. We survived through intelligence and cooperation. We built tools and weapons. We learned to fight back. But some of our ancestors took a different path. New images appeared. Early humans sitting near wolves, sharing meat. They chose to understand instead of just to fight. They watched the predators, learned their patterns, discovered their needs, and slowly, carefully, they built bridges. Apollo's carrier came into view on the displays. The reaction in the chamber was immediate. Sections filled with prey species shifted uncomfortably. Security personnel moved closer to the platform. This is Apollo, Amy said calmly. He is 9 months old. His species is called a leopard. They are apex predators on Earth, capable of killing prey much larger than themselves. They have killed humans throughout our history. She paused, letting that information settle. I am going to release him now. I ask that you remain calm. Sudden movements and loud sounds will frighten him. If you cannot remain calm, please exit quietly. Several dozen beings left the chamber. Amy waited until the movement stopped, then opened the carrier. Apollo stepped out, and even through the cameras, his presence was commanding. Beautiful and deadly in equal measure. Sit, Amy commanded. Apollo sat immediately. Down. He lay down, his eyes scanning the chamber with interest but no aggression. The growl you heard about in the reports from Harmony Nexus happened because Apollo was asking for food. I am going to recreate that situation now. Please understand that what you are about to hear is not a threat. It is communication. She pulled out a piece of meat. Apollo's entire body changed. He sat up, focused completely on her hand, and began to make that deep, rumbling sound that had terrified the students weeks ago. The effect on the assembly was dramatic. Entire sections erupted in alarm. Warning lights flashed. Security moved even closer, but Amy held up her hand and smiled. "He just wants a treat," she said clearly. She fed Apollo the meat and he chewed it contentedly while she scratched his ears. The chamber slowly quieted as beings realized no attack was coming. What you heard was not aggression. It was anticipation, excitement, a request. Apollo was speaking to me in his language, and I understood because I have learned to listen. She spent the next hour demonstrating Apollo's training, explaining the principles behind it, and sharing videos of other human-animal partnerships. She talked about dogs that saved lives, about horses that carried people to safety, about birds that delivered messages, about dolphins that protected swimmers from sharks. "This is humanity's gift to the galaxy," she said. "Not our weapons, not our tactics, not our strength. Our gift is our ability to see potential partners where others see only threats. Our gift is our willingness to build bridges across the deepest divides." A representative from the Velkari home government stood to ask a question. "Lieutenant Carter, what you have shown is impressive, but it took your species thousands of years to develop these skills. How can you teach other species to do in months what took you millennia?" "Because you have an advantage we didn't have," Amy replied. "You have us. You don't have to figure everything out from scratch. We can share what we've learned. We can help you avoid our mistakes. We can accelerate the process." A Thrin counselor spoke next. "What benefit does humanity gain from sharing this knowledge? What do you want in return?" Amy considered the question carefully. "We want what everyone wants: peace, prosperity, security. But more than that, we want to be understood. Humans have a reputation in the galaxy. We are seen as dangerous, aggressive, unpredictable. Some of that reputation is earned, but we are also capable of great compassion and cooperation. We want the chance to prove that." She gestured to Apollo. "This leopard could kill me. His instincts, his weapons, his strength all make that possible. But he won't. Because we have built something stronger than instinct. We have built trust. That is what humans offer the galaxy. The knowledge of how to build trust across impossible divides." The questions continued for another hour. Some were hostile, some were curious, some were excited. Amy answered each one honestly. She never claimed the process was easy or without risk. She never promised perfect results. But she offered hope that things could be different. Finally, the senior counselor, an ancient being from a species Amy didn't recognize, stood to speak. "We have heard your words, Lieutenant Carter. We have seen your demonstration. The council will deliberate on what you have shared." Amy bowed respectfully. "That is all I ask. Thank you for listening." She secured Apollo back in his carrier and left the chamber. Outside, Petra was waiting with Click and Marina. All three looked excited. "That was incredible," Petra said, her skin glowing bright gold. "The data you provided will be analyzed for months," Click added. "This could change everything." Marina pulsed a happy blue. "Our artists watched the broadcast. They are already creating new works inspired by what they saw." Amy felt the exhaustion hit her all at once. "I need to get Apollo back to our quarters. He's been incredible, but this was a lot for him." They walked together through the corridors. Other beings stopped to watch them pass. Some looked frightened. Others looked thoughtful. A few even nodded in respect. Back in her quarters, Amy released Apollo from the carrier and sat on the floor with him. He immediately curled up next to her, purring. The sound was comforting after the chaos of the assembly chamber. The response to Amy's presentation came in waves over the following weeks. First came the official communications from governments and scientific institutions. The Velkari Council requested a formal consultation on wildlife management. The Thrin Collective commissioned a study on implementing animal-assisted work programs. Even species that had been skeptical sent careful inquiries about learning more. But the unofficial response was even more powerful. Students from across the galaxy applied to Harmony Nexus specifically to study with Amy. Research papers analyzing her presentation flooded academic networks. Artists created sculptures, paintings, and musical compositions inspired by the bond between human and predator. Petra threw herself into learning everything she could about animal behavior. She spent hours in Amy's quarters watching Apollo and asking endless questions. "When his ears go back like that, what does it mean?" "Usually annoyance or discomfort." "See how his tail is twitching, too. He's tolerating the attention but getting tired of it." Petra made notes on her datapad. "On my world, we have small creatures that raid our gardens. They are not predators, but they are pests. I have been thinking about what you said, about understanding instead of fighting. What if we studied their behavior? Found out what they actually need? That's the first step. Understanding motivation is key to finding solutions. I have applied to a research position on my homeworld. They want to develop a new approach to wildlife management based on your principles. They want me to lead the project. Amy felt pride surge through her. Petra, that's amazing. You'll be perfect for it. The Valkyrie's skin glowed bright gold. I was terrified of Apollo when I first saw him. Now I understand that fear was limiting me. You showed me that. Click had his own news. His government had approved a pilot program to train animals for search and rescue operations. They wanted Click to oversee it, and they wanted Amy to consult. We need to select appropriate species, develop training protocols, and measure outcomes. It is a significant undertaking. I'd be happy to help however I can, Amy assured him. Even Marina had updates. The Polix art installation celebrating Amy and Apollo had become the most visited exhibit in their cultural network. More than that, Marina pulsed excitedly. It has started conversations. My people are discussing things we never discussed before. Fear and courage, difference and similarity, the possibility of friendship with those we do not understand. That's wonderful, Marina. You did that. You and Apollo. You showed us something new. But not everyone was celebrating. Amy received death threats from extremist groups who believed predators should be destroyed, not befriended. She got angry messages from humans who thought she was making their species look weak by emphasizing cooperation over conquest. Security had to be increased around her quarters. Instructor Zell visited her one evening to discuss the situation. I want you to know that the station administration takes these threats seriously. We will not allow harm to come to you or Apollo. I appreciate that, Amy said. But I knew this would be controversial. Change always is. Is it worth the risk? Amy looked at Apollo, sleeping peacefully in his cushioned area. Yes, because for every person who sends a threat, 10 more are inspired to think differently. The math works in favor of progress. The Galactic Assembly's official response came 3 months after Amy's presentation. The Council had voted to establish an interspecies cooperation initiative with substantial funding for research, education, and practical applications. Amy was offered the position of director. She sat in Zell's office reading the formal offer on her datapad. This is incredible, but it's also enormous. They want me to build an entire program from nothing. You have already built something from nothing, Zell pointed out. You turned fear into curiosity, suspicion into partnership. This is just the next step. I'll need a team. People who understand both the science and the philosophy. I believe you already have the beginning of one. Petra, Click, and Marina all accepted positions on Amy's team without hesitation. Together they began planning the first formal interspecies cooperation training center. It would be built on a neutral space station, with facilities for dozens of species and programs ranging from basic animal behavior to advanced partnership training. Amy threw herself into the work, but she never lost sight of why it mattered. Every protocol they designed, every curriculum they developed, every species they reached out to, it all came back to the simple truth she had demonstrated with Apollo. Fear could be overcome. Bridges could be built. Understanding was possible. Apollo continued to grow. At a year old, he was nearly full-sized and even more impressive than before. But his temperament remained gentle around those he knew. He became a fixture at the planning sessions, napping peacefully while the team worked. One day, Petra asked if she could try feeding Apollo directly. Amy had been waiting for this request. Are you sure you're ready? I am frightened, Petra admitted, her skin flickering between yellow and green. But I think that is the point. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite fear. Amy prepared Apollo with a training session first, ensuring he was calm and focused. Then she gave Petra a small treat and guided her through the process. Hold it flat in your palm. Let him come to you. Don't pull away even if you're scared. Petra extended her hand, trembling slightly. Apollo approached slowly, his eyes fixed on the treat. He sniffed her hand carefully, then took the food with gentle teeth. Petra gasped but held steady. When Apollo stepped back to chew, her skin exploded into brilliant gold. I did it. I fed a predator. Me. I never thought this would be possible. You were always capable of it, Amy said. You just needed to believe. The training center opened 6 months later. The first class included 30 students from 20 species, all eager to learn. Amy stood before them on the opening day with Apollo at her side and felt the weight of the moment. "Welcome," she said. "You are here because you believe, as I do, that there is a better way. A way that builds bridges instead of walls. A way that seeks understanding instead of dominance. It will not be easy. You will face your fears daily. You will fail sometimes. But you will also discover things about yourselves and others that you never knew were possible." She gestured to Apollo. "This leopard taught me as much as I taught him. He showed me patience. He reminded me that trust must be earned, not demanded. He proved that even the deepest divides can be crossed with the right approach." The students began their training. Some worked with small, non-threatening animals to build basic skills. Others studied theory and behavior. A few, the bravest or most advanced, began working with species that triggered their instinctive fears. Amy supervised it all, but she also continued her own work with Apollo. She documented everything they did together, creating training materials and case studies for others to learn from. One evening, as she sat in her quarters reviewing the day's sessions, Apollo climbed onto the couch beside her. He was too big for this now, his weight making the cushions sag, but he still tried. She laughed and made room for him. "You know you're not a cub anymore, right?" she said, scratching his ears. He purred and pushed his head into her hand, demanding more attention. "I guess size doesn't matter when it comes to being spoiled." There was a chime at her door. Amy checked the screen and saw Instructor Zell standing outside. She let him in, and he looked at Apollo sprawled across the couch with amusement. "He takes up more space than he used to." "He takes up more space than I do now," Amy agreed. "What brings you by?" "I wanted to share something with you." Zell activated a holographic display. It showed statistics from across the galaxy. Applications to xenobiology programs were up 300%. Requests for information about animal behavior had increased by similar numbers. Most significantly, reported conflicts between species and wildlife had decreased in areas where new understanding-based approaches had been implemented. "These are preliminary results," Zell said, "but they suggest your work is having real impact." Amy studied the numbers, feeling a mix of pride and responsibility. "It's just the beginning. We have so much more to do, perhaps, but you have already accomplished something remarkable. You have changed how species think about each other and about the creatures they share their worlds with. That is no small thing." After Zell left, Amy remained on the couch with Apollo. She thought about the journey that had brought them here. From Earth to Harmony Nexus to the Galactic Assembly to this training center, from fear to understanding, from isolation to cooperation. Apollo shifted in his sleep, his paw landing on her leg. Even unconscious, he trusted her completely. That trust was the foundation of everything they had built together. The next morning brought news that made Amy's heart skip. The Velkari government had successfully implemented a wildlife management program based on understanding and cooperation rather than elimination and barriers. Early results showed both the protected crops and the animal populations were thriving. Petra sent a message with the data, her text practically glowing with excitement. More governments reached out wanting to learn the approach. More species applied to the training center. More bridges were being built every day. But the most meaningful moment came during a routine training session.